The Tale of Sammy Squirrel. Once upon a time, there was a little squirrel named Sammy who lived in a cozy burrow under a big old oak tree. Sammy was a lively squirrel with bright, curious eyes, a bushy tail that bounced as he ran, and a love for adventure that often got him into trouble. He lived with his mother and his three sisters, Sally, Sophie, and Susie, who were all very well behaved, except for Sammy, who was always itching for excitement. One crisp, sunny morning, Sammy's mother gathered her children around as they nibbled on acorn muffins for breakfast. "Now, my dears," she said in her soft, wise voice, "I'm off to the far side of the forest to gather nuts. You may play in the sunny patch by the stream or go scampering up the oak, but whatever you do, stay away from Mr. McGregor's garden. It is a dangerous place, especially for little squirrels." "Yes, Mother," said Sally, Sophie, and Susie, nodding their heads obediently. They knew all about Mr. McGregor, the tall, grumpy gardener who did not like animals of any kind trampling through his garden. But Sammy's ears twitched with excitement at the very mention of the garden. Just a peek wouldn't hurt, he thought to himself, already dreaming of the delicious berries and nuts hidden in Mr. McGregor's vegetable beds. As soon as their mother disappeared into the trees, Sammy whispered to his sisters, "Let's go explore Mr. McGregor's garden. Just think of all the treats we'd find." "No way, Sammy," cried Sally. "Mr. McGregor will chase you away." But Sammy only chuckled, flicking his bushy tail. "Oh, don't worry. I'll be back before you know it. I'm the fastest squirrel in the whole forest." With a mischievous grin, Sammy darted down the winding path that led to the edge of Mr. McGregor's garden. He paused for a moment to make sure the coast was clear, then slipped under the wooden gate and into the garden. The garden was like a treasure trove of treats, bursting with rows of leafy greens, piles of shiny red strawberries, fat orange carrots, and the most delicious-looking acorns he had ever seen. "Oh, what a feast!" Sammy squeaked, clapping his paws in delight. He scurried over to a bush heavy with blueberries, plucked the juiciest one, and popped it into his mouth. He nibbled and crunched, savoring the sweet, juicy flavor. Next, he hopped over to a row of tall sunflowers, their golden faces towering above him, and filled his cheeks with seeds. As he was munching away, Sammy spotted a row of bright red tomatoes glistening in the sunlight. "I wonder what these taste like," he thought, scampering over to investigate. He nibbled a corner and was about to take a big bite when he heard a loud, angry thump. Startled, Sammy's heart leapt in his chest. He looked up, and to his horror, he saw Mr. McGregor standing just a few feet away, holding a large garden rake. "What are you doing in my garden, you little rascal?" Mr. McGregor bellowed, his face turning red as he stomped closer. "I'll teach you to stay away." With a squeak of terror, Sammy dashed behind a cabbage plant, his little heart pounding as fast as his tiny paws. He peeked out to see Mr. McGregor's dusty brown boots stomping closer, so he darted under a row of carrots, his tail flicking behind him. But Mr. McGregor was determined. He lunged forward, his rake swooshing down near Sammy's tail, just missing him by inches. Sammy bolted toward a cluster of pumpkins, squeezing himself into a small gap between two big round gourds. He held his breath, hoping Mr. McGregor would pass him by. But Mr. McGregor's sharp eyes spotted him, and he reached down with his big gloved hand. Thinking fast, Sammy leapt over the pumpkins and scrambled through a tangled thicket of vines. His tail got caught for a moment, and he tugged and tugged until, pop, he pulled free, leaving a few strands of his fluffy tail fur caught in the brambles. He could feel Mr. McGregor's shadow looming behind him as he raced toward the gate. Sammy squeezed under the gate just as Mr. McGregor's rake clattered against it, and he scurried down the forest path as fast as his little legs could carry him. Behind him, he heard Mr. McGregor's voice fading in the distance, shouting, "And don't come back, you little scoundrel." When Sammy finally reached the oak tree, he was panting and disheveled, with bits of leaves stuck to his fur and his tail looking a bit less fluffy than before. His sisters ran over, gasping in surprise. "Sammy, what happened to you?" asked Susie. Sammy took a deep breath and told them the whole tale of his wild adventure in Mr. McGregor's garden, complete with the chase and his narrow escape. His sisters listened with wide eyes, shaking their heads at his daring escapade. His mother returned just in time to hear the end of the story. She gave him a gentle, knowing look. "Let this be a lesson, my dear Sammy," she said, brushing a laugh from his fur. "Sometimes the sweetest treats are not worth the trouble they bring. The best adventures happen right here with your family, where you're safe." Sammy nodded, feeling a little embarrassed but relieved to be home. He promised his mother and sisters that from then on, he would stick to the sunny patch by the stream, and from that day forward, Sammy had plenty of exciting adventures. But he kept his paws far away from Mr. McGregor's garden, happy to explore his own part of the forest, where his family was always close by.